Thank you for joining us. You are a part of a powerful group who recognizes that Black women's health should be at the forefront of the national conversation. We are mothers, daughters, activists, entrepreneurs, entertainers, corporate warriors, and more, who help boost the economy and often drive the national conversation. For almost 40 years, the Black Women's Health Imperative has strived to amplify our voices, help enact policy that protects us, research our issues, create programs that enhance our lives, and produce events like this one to ensure we keep the conversation going about the issues that matter to us most. So, let's get started with our program.
Greetings. Thank you for joining us. I am Dr. Kanika Harris, Senior Director of Maternal and Child Health for the Black Women's Health Imperative. We are here for the 7th year of Black Maternal Health Week, going strong with our theme, Our Bodies Still Belong to Us, Reproductive Justice Now. To start this week off, we want to center men in our conversation, center their stories, center their experiences, center their work and joy in the fight for reproductive justice. We cannot end Black maternal health crisis without ending white supremacy culture and racism, and we need everybody on deck for that, especially our allies, our partners, our brothers, uncles, fathers in this movement. We also have sons, and what are we teaching them now about entering fatherhood in the U.S. and how they prepare for that journey? Our esteemed moderator is Dr. Mark Lamont Hill. He is one of the leading intellectual voices in this country. Dr. Hill is an American academic, author, activist, and television personality. He is known most as the host of Upfront on Al Jazeera. He's also a host on BET. We've also seen him on CNN. Ebony Magazine has named him as one of America's most influential people. So I'm going to turn this panel over to the fellas so we can hear their story, hear their experiences, and center them in reproductive justice. Thank you.
Dr. Harris, thank you so much for that. I am so excited to be here. Peace, everybody. It's a blessing to be here. It's an honor to be here. This is not an ordinary event. This is an event that is really targeted toward changing the status quo, toward shifting how we talk and how we think about Black women's maternal health and really maternal health more broadly. And this isn't a one-off. While this event is special and unique and dope and exciting and all of that, this is really an extension of the WBHI's larger position on maternal health. If you don't know, the BWHI, the Black Women's Health Imperative, is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing health equity and social justice for Black women across the lifespan. That means we're not just talking about people who are still of age for childbirth. We're talking about the entire lifespan from birth to death. And the reason why that's so important is because Black women and girls are vulnerable to a range of issues, crises, challenges that are not born out of any pathology that we have. Ain't nothing wrong with Black women and girls. Black women and girls are amazing. But the systems, the structures, the forces that surround us, the environmental factors, the ecological factors, all the stuff that people much smarter than me, like Dr. Harris, are going to talk about, and my panelists are going to talk about, all those factors shape our outcomes. And we want to make sure that we repair the damage that's been done and be able to imagine new possibilities, new health outcomes for the nation's 22 million, I'm gonna say that number again, 22 million Black women and girls. We want to invest in strategies that accomplish that goal. And this webinar is an example of that. What we want to do here is have a conversation about Black men. That's why I'm here, right? We started last April. We had a wonderful conversation, but too often we have conversations that start, you feel good, and you leave. And we don't carry that into practice. We don't continue the conversation. We don't do the work that needs to be done to tie a full loop. But the WBHI doesn't roll that way. They're quite the opposite. They are committed to engagement and re-engagement, doing all of the things necessary to bring Black men into a conversation that we have either been left out of or that we don't see ourselves as legitimate partners in it, or maybe even that we pull ourselves out of. And so we want to address that with this panel. And so tonight or this afternoon, we're going to continue to explore the role that black men can play in addressing this crisis. And it's not easy. It ain't easy, y'all. Everybody's always talking about conversations. We're gonna have a public conversation, a private conversation, a semi-public conversation. We're gonna do all this stuff. We're gonna have all these different types of conversations. But conversations can only happen if people feel safe. Conversations can only happen, real conversations. I'm not talking about talking points. I'm not talking about just saying things that sound good or saying things that, allow you to go along to get along. I'm talking about spaces where you can be vulnerable, where black men can talk about who we are and who we're not, where we can talk about what we dream of, what we aspire to, where we've fallen short, where we're afraid, where we wish we were more courageous, what we're proud of, what we're ashamed of. We want to talk about all of it. And not just in some self-serving, navel-gazing, solipsistic space, but as a way of being better advocates, better allies, better partners, better uncles, better everything, fathers, everything to black women and girls. And so that's why we're here. But I'm not the expert. I said, rather than me pretend to be an expert, why don't we bring together some of the smartest, coolest, most interesting, most courageous, most successful brothers that we know from a range of backgrounds, and have a real conversation about that vulnerability. Have a create a space of safety. Now, no spaces are entirely safe. There's always things at play. There's always power dynamics. There's always things that need to be risked. But we're going to do our best to have the most courageous conversation that we can, the most honest conversation that we can, the most informative conversation that we can, because that's what BWHI creates for us. Let me introduce the panelists. Enough talking from me. That's the most y'all gonna hear from me tonight, probably. Let me bring in my esteemed panelists. The first one up is Jonathan Webb. Jonathan Webb is the Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Women's Health, Obstetric and Neonatal Nurses. He has spent more than 15 years in the public health space promoting community health outcomes, addressing the social determinants of health, and tackling a number of epidemics that include childhood obesity, diabetes, and CVD. Jonathan's professional experience includes work for 2 local health departments, including work within the Office of Epidemiology of the City of Chicago, and also leading the Community Health Division of the City of Evanston. Additionally, Jonathan has spent more than 9 years as a nonprofit employee, leading strategy, building meaningful partnerships, fundraising, that's no small thing, and implementing programming for organizations like the Association of Maternal and Child Health Programs, the McGaw YMCA, Feed the Children, and the American Osteopathic Association, as well as the American Diabetes Association. He is a subject matter expert on lots of stuff, including the March of Dimes National Advisory Committee. He's the co-chair for the National Strategy Work Group focused on dismantling racism and addressing unequal treatment under the Mom and Baby Action Network. He's also a public member of the American Board of Pediatrics Foundation. This brother is decorated. He is brilliant. He is accomplished. He is a native Philadelphian, which makes him even more extraordinary in my estimation. Let me, why don't all of us give a nice warm round of applause to Mr. Jonathan Webb. You don't hear the crowd, John, but I promise you right now, there's a roar. There is a roar. And also, John and I went to high school together. So we know where all the bodies are buried, where all the bones are. So it's like a nuclear arms race. So I can't make too many jokes because he can do the same. So I'm gonna be on my best behavior with John because he can really make me look bad.
I appreciate that.
Me too. Up next is Bruce McIntyre III. Bruce is a father, an educator, an entrepreneur. He's a maternal and mental health advocate, and he's founder of Save a Rose Foundation. Bruce McIntyre III founded Save a Rose after losing his fiance Amber Rose Isaac in April of 2020 due to medical negligence that took place throughout her entire pregnancy. Amber had developed HELP syndrome, HELLP syndrome, that went ignored, and she was not told that her condition. Uh, oh my God, she was not told that her condition was what it was until she was induced for labor. I've talked to him before. I've interviewed him before. We've had this conversation before, and it never stops. It never stops being painful to hear. Amber underwent an emergency C-section while her platelet levels were below normal value range, and tragically, she didn't survive. Her death was 100% preventable, and his mission has been to combat and dismantle the systemic flaws within the medical system and to redirect the course of birth equity towards better birthing solutions that benefit everybody. Bruce has been working ceaselessly to prevent senseless mortalities and morbidities from happening and to create a space where women of color feel seen and heard. He is a focal subject of the award-winning and Emmy-nominated, gotta add that, film Aftershock, which is streaming on Hulu, as well as many other outlets. Make sure you check it out. He's influenced legislative change around the country, and this brother has touched the hearts of millions of people around the world. My dear brother Bruce, it's so good to see you. Welcome back to our space, our shared space, and welcome to this conversation and this incredible panel.
Nice to see y'all, gentlemen. Nice to be here. Nice to see you, Mark.
You too, King. And let me bring in the third piece, last and certainly not least, Ajay Ose Hargrove. Excuse me. Ajay Ose Hargrove is a DC native.
Mm-hmm.
I can hold that against him, though. He studied architecture at Howard University, and he currently works for DC Department of General Services. He's married to a postpartum doula and educator, and together they have 4 children and 1 grandson. 3 of their children were born at home with a midwife. He and his wife chose to have home births with their 3 youngest children because they felt that the midwifery model of care was the safest option for them as a Black family that was birthing in the DMV. He and his wife are both advocates for home birth. They're both advocates for breastfeeding, and they are both just extraordinary examples of the work that needs to be done right here in our community. My dear brothers, thank you all for being here, man. I want to thank y'all again for being willing to be here, being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to be honest. And the first question I'm going to ask y'all, and I'm going to start with you, Ajay, is the why of it. Why is it important for brothers to be in this conversation?
I think it's important because we are the sons, we are the fathers, we are the brothers, we are the uncles, and the impact that it has on our female counterparts is crucial to family development. I come from a very strong family background, and one of the things that was always goal for me, as taught by my father, was family is first, and you gotta, in order to have that family, you gotta be able to protect and support your partner. And I think that without us being in this conversation, it's very one-sided.
Bruce?
Yeah, so of course, after losing my partner, I jumped into this work immediately. After doing so much studying and reading and speaking to birth workers, I started to realize that a lot of these birth-related deaths were preventable. And luckily for me, I was, able to take my partner to all of her every single one of her prenatal appointments. I was right there alongside her, learning with her. Because once your partner gets pregnant, it's not just about her; it's about the father too. We both pregnant, and so I needed to jump into this work immediately so I could prevent what happened to me, prevent it from happening to other families. And a wise man once told me, in order to save mankind, we have to save our women first.
Yeah, I'll echo what's been shared. Ose mentioned it. We're husbands, we're fathers, we're sons, and the foundation of our communities, in my opinion, is families. the launching pad for what we're able to do, and our success in life comes from how strong your family and community is. So this is something that should be of importance to all of us. One of the elements that I'll focus in on is the fact that we're also partners. And in this conversation with partners, in your relationship with partners, you hold each other up, you lift each other up, and you push issues that are important to your team, your partner group. So I think it's a responsibility that we all share as partners in this conversation to make sure that we're holding each other up and lifting each other up as we move forward.
You all are speaking about partnerships and relationships and marriage and love as something that men and women do together. But y'all know historically that ain't how it's gone, and that ain't how we were taught to think about it. I mean, I grew up watching TV, and the woman would be in the delivery room, and dad would either be in the waiting room with a cigar or off in the crib with the whiskey. And so, there was this idea that women handle the birthing work and men handled maybe the providing of paying the bills. We was there somewhere at the scene of the crime when the baby got created, but we weren't necessarily there for the birthing work or any part of the journey. The idea of us going to I never saw popular representations of men going to doctors' prenatal appointments or having these. I mean, we used to joke about men who went to Lamaze class, and so there's been this maybe shift in how we talk about this stuff. What's your sense from the time you grew up until now about how men were taught or how you were taught to think about your role in the birthing process?
So, so first thing, can we just jump in, Mark? You want to
jump on in?
Yeah. So I'll say, one, I'm glad that there's been a shift, because you're right. At least from where you and I are the same generation. It wasn't always cool to think about these stepping across what traditional gender lines, responsibility lines, and I'm glad that we started to advance past that thinking, because I don't really believe that there is a man's work or woman's work. I think in the way things are happening in our society, people are called into action and called into to support wherever is necessary. We don't have cookie cutter, easy environments that we live in, and I think the opportunity for us as men to lean in where we're needed, for us as men to be able to provide examples for the next generation that it's okay to step into these different roles and to play with kids and I think back to my dad. My dad is my hero, but there wasn't the dynamic was you're providing, not necessarily in the on the ground playing with toys and stuff, and I'm thankful to have the relationship with my son where we can do that kind of stuff. My daughter, we can do that kind of stuff. So I believe that I'm so thankful that the norms have changed, because I think it's necessary to be able to see for my daughter that there's some strength that she can have in a different way, and for my son that there's a softness that he can have in a certain way, and together they can come together in a partnership and be great.
I'm piggyback on what Jonathan was saying. Being able to jump in where we're needed. There's been a shift not only on the male side, but also on the female side, where the women are not always in a position where they have mom or grandma to be there with them. So husband has to kind of step in and support where he can. So like physically, I was in the room with my wife, each time she's holding on to me or when I'm getting something, I was in the mix. I was on the field playing it, doing what I need to do. And I think that it's shifting. I think there's more of a sense of responsibility to do that now. And that's not always, men now, I know my younger brothers are looking at it differently. They don't want to just sit on the sideline. They want to understand what's going on. They want to be able to be there to help where they can help. I mean, we're not pushing them out, but we're going to try to be there to support as much as we can. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful that that narrative is changing on that stigma for Black men, not being there during the birthing process. But I also think it's due to conditioning. I also think there isn't, the way that we're taught in the medical system, there's not much father inclusivity. Um, and that's major. I've been to, appointments where I felt like I didn't belong there.
Yeah.
I have the OBGYN asking me personal questions, um, when it should just be, to, the mother and her health and the child, instead of, all this implicit bias that goes on. And, you automatically feel like you're judged or, um, so things like that. So I'm grateful that more father inclusivity is happening now. That's why I'm also grateful for midwives and doulas. Um, they really get you involved in the birthing process, and they educate you as well. I think education is a very huge piece that we're missing because we don't understand, just how powerful birthing is. And once you really understand that process, it really brings you back to your roots as a man, as a father, as a provider, and it really builds that strong, deep connection with your child and with the mother. So I'm very grateful that I've been able to learn as much from doulas and midwives and having that inclusivity.
But what made y'all pivot? Like how did y'all get to a place where y'all are different than everybody? Because y'all are exceptional in certain ways, right? Like you said, your surroundings didn't produce that. Our parents didn't produce that. How did you know that you needed to show up differently in this part of the journey?
I think that growing up, all of us want to be better than our parents, essentially. We want to give our children the best lives that we can, better lives than some of us may have had. And so that's what really made me want to pivot, of course. And, things like creating generational wealth and building a family dynamics and that foundation. That's what really made me want to change. Growing up, I've had like siblings, split up and go their own ways, or cousins and aunts and stuff like that. And I think, during this process, it really brings it really centers family. And that's something that I've always longed for and strived for. So that's what really made me want to pivot. I want a better life for my child, and I want him to, have, all of this support, and I want him to have these fundamentals.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the Bruce, I appreciate that when you always want the generation behind you to be a little better than you are, and I think observing the dynamics in the way that we were traditionally raised. There's at least for me, there was like a ping or a prick in my spirit that something could be a little different. When you start to engage with people in a different way and kind of figure like the women in my family and start to hear and see how the impact of that misogynistic and paternalistic environment, how the impacts it has on them, and as strong and as much credit as I'll give my dad for instilling in me the correct things. I had a really strong mom and a really strong grandma who pulled me to the side and made sure I understand how to function around the women in my community and my family, and that opened my eyes to the ways I think things could have been better. And I wanted to live that way, and then make sure my son and my daughter see that in the way they're raised also.
Yeah, I would agree. My mom, very strong lady. Um, she wanted to do home birthing, but she wasn't able to. And my dad, very much traditionally raised from the South, kind of said that's a woman's work. But when I told him that we were going to do this for my son, he encouraged me. He was like, yes, go ahead and do that, move forward, and you do what you need to do, and it was, to be honest, it was an exciting adventure when I first heard my son, I'm going to have a son. And me and my wife said, let's do this at home. I was like, turn my head. I thought about it. I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's move in this direction. And because I think a lot of men, a lot of young boys, there's an interest, and we just have to pull it out of them and provide them with the education that they need to know how to move forward with it. You know what I mean?
That's right.
That makes a lot of sense. Let me bring us back to April for a moment, because something really interesting happened in our conversation back in April. Uh, it was revealed that one of the challenges for birth workers who were men, was a sense of alienation while being active in the movement towards reproductive justice and for birth equity. Uh, and a question we did not ask was, why should men have a say in advocating for women's reproductive rights and birth equity at all? Bruce, I'm gonna start with you. I want both of y'all to answer that, but Bruce, let me start with you. Because people are asking that. Why should men have a say at all in advocating for women's reproductive rights and birth equity? And it's an interesting one because, sometimes we talk about racial justice, some people are like, why are white people talking? Right? If it's transracial, people say, why are cis people talking? Not that we shouldn't be allies, but that we should have a say in it, in a different kind of way. Help me understand why we should.
Yeah, so I also felt like that. I also felt alienated when I first began into this work because I felt like I didn't have a place as a man to, tell women about their bodies or to, and it got a little tricky because I wanted to make sure that I was doing right by women in this work, but also voicing, my opinion or where I feel like things could work. But that's also when I had to realize that I needed to take a step back as well. I needed to take a step back and really listen to women and really listen to their needs. What do they need? What are they don't feel like they're being heard as now, like they don't feel like they're being heard at all. And we have to amplify these messages for them. Um, in this world, for some reason, men are being heard more, and I feel like if we have to take that as a responsibility. It's a responsibility for us to, yeah, uplift these women and amplify their voices, their concerns, because if they're not being heard, we need to make sure that we're standing behind them and that they're being heard. Because all of our voices together is gonna spark a change. And I think, yeah, just taking a step back from myself and really and I don't even want to say the word allow, but letting women lead the way. Um, this is birth work. I feel like women understand birth work a lot better than men. And then the profession was taken over by white male gynecologists who perfected the craft off of slaves, off of women, cutting women open 30 or more times. And, and then, a man's voice started to overpower the women's voices. And, when women are crying and screaming and pleading for help, men are just like, oh, she's all right, she's okay, we're gonna proceed. um, and then also, with my situation as well, if I wasn't, if I wasn't alongside my partner the entire time and showing up to every single one of her prenatal appointments, after her passing, I would have been completely lost. I would have been completely lost. I wouldn't know how to fight for myself. I wouldn't know how to fight for my child. And I wouldn't know how to advocate and fight for my partner even after her passing. So really just having that understanding and being there, and that having that father inclusivity has allowed me to have a voice, because somebody also, had to make me realize that even if I don't feel like I have a space speaking in women's health, at the end of the day, I'm advocating for my partner.
Yeah.
I'm advocating for my partner, and that being her being a Black woman whose death was preventable, I want to make sure that other women are being heard and seen as well, so that we can keep these families going and thriving. So I think it's very important for men to speak up for reproductive health, reproductive education, reproductive birth equity is very important, because we need resources in these spaces, and we need them immediately. We need them fast. And I think there should be an uproar from men and women.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, Bruce. Thank you for sharing. Um, I will say one of the reasons why I think men should have a voice in this is something you alluded to earlier. I think everyone's kind of touched on a little bit, that we're all in this together. And my wife and I have had challenges with the healthcare system. We've had loss at the hands of the healthcare system. Hey, Malcolm. Hey, Malcolm.
Brother Malcolm has a fever, I think, so that's why I had to go get him from the babysitter.
I appreciate it, man. Hey, Malcolm, how you doing, man? So we've had, my wife and I've had loss in the medical system. We've experienced bias in the healthcare system, and that's not that I say we, because that's something that we share in. You know, we deal with that, the pain, the implications of that, the family challenges. We deal with that together. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to ever step into the place and know exactly what it feels like to walk in the space that only she can walk in. But as a person who loves my wife and loves my family, we share in that experience together. So to just echo what you said, Bruce, because we're in it together, because we can't sit on the sidelines and watch the team, well, one, be affected by something collectively and not say anything, but then two, also watch a loved one experience bias and challenge and loss, and not jump in and say, hey, did you hear what she just said? she needs she's okay. Or, hey, did you hear? I don't think that's how any of us are built. I will say, just professionally, coming into this space in the maternal and child health space, I consistently get asked, as a man, why do you, it's odd, why are you here? Why are you doing this? And to me,
they question your motives a little bit.
Yeah.
Your motives, your character, something. They're like, something don't add up.
Exactly. And I almost very, very respectfully feel like saying, why not? This affects all of us. Why wouldn't I want to advocate, to support, and be an ally? And I think if done in the appropriate way, where you're amplifying voices and supporting and not taking over the conversation, I think it can be a powerful team.
No, I echo everything you guys say. It's a partnership, and it has to come from a place of support and protection. With your wife, I have 3 daughters, so I'm gonna step up for my girls. If something needs to happen, I'm gonna provide it. I'm gonna make sure it's provided. For my wife, I'm gonna make sure the space is clear and safe. There's an old proverb that I remembering goes, "Life is war, and your family is your army." So I'm part of that. I'm part of that army. We're not going to go through this alone. We're not doing this alone. So we have to be able to step up and say and support where our women are going. It's not something we need to let them do alone.
Let me stay with you for a second, because there's a question that I think, for me, is one of the most important questions I can ask. I don't know if I have a good answer for it, or a full answer for it. And I have 3 children. They range from 2 Malcolm turned 2 yesterday to 23, and I got 2 grandkids. I still don't have a full answer for it. But the question is, what do we want for our children beyond birth? We want them to be healthy, but beyond that, what do we want? What does it mean to be a father and bring children into this world? What is our goal? What is our vision? What is our desire? What do we want for them?
Yeah. That's a question that I'm constantly thinking about, and I think it evolves as we get older and as we experience things and as our children begin to experience things. Um, each child, I think we're reborn. There's another mission, because before there was only one child. Now there's two children you have to keep in mind, bear in mind. I think that what we want for them after birth is one of the things that I'm going to switch a little bit and I'm going to come back. So one of the things that me and my wife do is we teach a class to a rites of passage group of young boys, and and it's a birthing class. We go through the different stages of birth, of pregnancy and birth, and one of the things that one of the things we teach them is that when children are born, they have two missions. The first mission is to come out and find the people that love them, and that's the mother and father. And so the father, that means that you got to be available for that child to be loved. And the second mission is for that child to go out and understand what their mission is. And the first mission that we give our children is always that I'm going to say me is going to be family and family first. And then I want to show them how to make good decisions. I want them to be healthy. I want them to be happy. And I'm doing that through an example with my wife. So it's a constant development as we mature, as our relationships change, as we experience the world in different ways. And I think birthing is a significant rites of passage um, that we have to show our children.
Powerful. Yeah, you look.
Can I add on to that real quick?
Yeah, please. I want this for everybody. This for all three of y'all.
So I echo everything Osei just said. And in terms of what I want for my kids. I mean, I could have like the more cliche, to be better than to have better opportunities than I did, and to be able to thrive and have opportunities and exist in a different way than the generation before them. But I'll go one step higher, which is, in my opinion, the spirit of this conversation and the work that everyone is doing on this call, and the work that Black Women's Health Imperative is doing. But I want our kids to be able to exist and thrive in a system that sees them for who they are, allows them to be able to step out into spaces and succeed or fail, but do that of their own merit, not because of some systemic barriers or challenges that have placed more weight on them or more weight on their mistakes, more weight on them to succeed. Just limit these eliminate the systemic and barriers that exist currently that we're dealing with. And I think each generation has progressed a bit, and hopefully we continue to progress so that birth outcomes, equitable birth outcomes, are sort of commonplace in 10, 15 years. That hearing women and birthing people in the birthing process is commonplace, is standard. That treating people that giving people respectful maternity care is not something that we have to look as an outlier. And you could take that to every system, education, criminal justice, whatever it might be. But the systems that are in place now, that we create them so that our kids are in a position to thrive in a way with freedom that we didn't always have.
So, yeah, these two explained it gracefully. I mean, these are all the things that I want for my children as well. And, I really want for the future of my children to live in their most authentic selves as well. Like I want them to really learn through life and be able to learn through life without having to stress about all of these daily stressors that we have. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, we all want financial freedom and generational wealth for our children, and we want them to be good in those areas as well. But I also want my children to live life with a moral compass. And be great people. I want my children to inspire others. And I feel like we really have that power within ourselves. And I preach that, by being vulnerable myself, my children will also be able to be vulnerable with me. So really building that connection, because I also say, even though with our partners, we call that our partnership, with parenting is a partnership. With your child as well, that's a partnership. And so I really, these are the things that I really want for my children in the future.
Appreciate you, Mark.
Yeah.
What role does fear play in all of this? Like, my son here is 2, and I'm mad when he's awake past his bedtime, but as soon as if he goes to sleep too easy, I'm still walking past the crib. I'm still listening, making sure he's breathing. If he's sleeping too calm, and here's the thing: when my daughter was 16, I was doing that. I go up the steps, be like, "She good?" She's away in college. I'm afraid. Fear doesn't govern my life, but I ain't gonna lie and say that I'm not afraid for them, that I don't worry for them. Even as you all talk about like the kind of world you want them to occupy, um, there's a part of it is like I want the world to be welcoming to them and loving to them and generous to them. And as I say, when you say they come into the world and they go looking for people who love them, it's like that should be their parents, but I fear about that first moment where they realize the world don't love them. And I know that some of those fears are fears that we assign to parents, but a lot of times those fears get assigned to mothers. We impose the discipline. What are you doing?
He's silent back there, man.
Oh, he just grabbed people cane. Now it's his cane go. It ain't mine no more. But I don't think people appreciate that fathers have similar concerns and similar fears, and that we feel these things in ways that sometimes aren't legible to the world because we're not allowed to be afraid, because we have to be strong. We're not allowed to be worried because we got to have the stability. These are the roles and the identities that are assigned to us. So how do y'all first of all, do y'all feel that stuff, or am I just the outlier weirdo? And if I'm not, I hope I'm not. How do y'all deal with it?
I'll start off. You're not. My son right now is in college, and I'm concerned when he's off. I mean, he's. I know he can take care of himself. I know he knows how to make good decisions. But that still doesn't take it away. You still have that concern. My daughter is out of the house, but she's closer, my oldest. So I'm not too worried about her. But then I still think about my younger 2, and you just want that. I don't think that fear is a good thing, because it continues for you to want the best for them and to think of strategies how to provide the best for them. I mean, it's a catalyst. It's not I don't think it's a hindrance. I think but yeah, you're not an outlier. I think we all go through that. I think I've definitely walked past my kids' crib when they were younger, just making sure that they were still breathing.
You always say the glove doesn't fit. How many times did you learn nothing today? It never fits.
He's clearly tried that out on before, Mark.
Apparently, now I'm worried about what he's doing when I'm asleep. Maybe I should be watching myself, make sure I'm with those black gloves and low hats in the middle of the night, man. That's gonna serve me. But what about that? I mean, like, John, your son's about to go off to college. You knew him as a baby. When he's at college, you don't know when he comes home anymore. He's out with his Kappa frat brothers. He's out hanging out, doing this thing. What do you're still gonna be afraid? Like, how would you manage that fear throughout time and space?
Well, first thing, the fear would be that Kappa frat brother thing. We'll talk about that offline. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a good answer for how to manage it, because it is something that's part of my, like you said, Osei, you said, Mark. I think about it all the time. I think about him going off into these spaces as a black male, and in spaces where, as I mentioned before, systems aren't the most welcoming. And he's been in environments where mom and dad have been trying to support him in his growth and his environments to make sure that he feels like a strong black man in these spaces. But when we're not there, what's going to happen? How is he going to be received? How is he going to be able to stand when realizes, like you said, Mark, everyone's not out there for his best interest. With my daughter, I want her to experience life and be able to be carefree and everything. But people, this society preys on our young on our little ones, and that keeps me up too. And to the question you're asking about the what I was getting from the question about the gender lines, like my wife and I take turns. There's sometimes when I'm like, hey, don't worry about it. Let them get out and fly. And she's concerned and nervous. Other times she's like, why are you concerned about it? Let them get out and fly. So we go back and forth.
That's helpful. That's helpful.
Yeah, and I think as a parent, yeah, you live with that fear every day. You know, I do have them little fears where I feel like, because my son sleeps crazy, so like I feel him tossing and turning. I'll be thinking any minute now he gonna roll off the bed, and then he gonna wake up and point fingers at me like I pushed him.
Right.
And
to be clear, at some point he is gonna roll off the bed. You have to accept that.
You gotta accept it.
That it's gonna happen. You know what I mean? He'll probably be fine. Just know that.
Yeah, but then again, I you know, I have these other fears as well to piggyback, like you know, God forbid when my son's ready to start driving and he gets pulled over and and he's profiled. I had to deal with that when I was younger, and at any moment them situations can go left. And I speak to so many families every week who have suffered from losses, and I don't know what I would do or how I would feel if I one day got a call from the school and something happened at the school. Maybe somebody was having a bad day and came and shot the school up, or a teacher broke up with an ex and somebody having a bad day, but I would hate to get one of those calls. Like, I don't know how I would feel. So I have a fear even sending my son off to school sometimes. And yeah, living in society as a Black man as well, like, as the odds are stacked against us, of course. So I think as Black men, we've just adapted that fear. That just became a part of who we are, because these things happen. These things are happening. This is our reality as people of color. So I think, yeah, every day we walk around with that fear and we just adjust.
And I think in some ways, if I can piggyback, I think that's why it's also extremely important for conversations like this, and to have like a group of a band of brothers that people can engage with, because sometimes, like you started out appropriately framing, Mark, it's not always socially acceptable to be able to talk about this and acknowledge how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not healthy from a mental health perspective either, to hold it in and not be able to share with other folks. Hey, here's what I'm dealing with. Do you feel this thing too? How do you get through it? It's not going to change the environment necessarily of what our kids are going to be walking into. But from a father perspective, it at least helps to normalize the fact that we aren't able to stop everything. It's okay to fear. It's okay to be afraid, and you can give yourself a little bit of grace.
Yeah, I think, Mark, you said it though. We have these fears, but your fear is not dictating everything, and we have to.
Or else you wouldn't get nothing done.
Exactly. You just be paralyzed.
You get behind the wheel of a car in the first place.
Exactly.
It's terrifying. You'd be sleeping next to the crib. All till they sick.
Yeah.
So it's figuring out how to have a healthy recognition of those fears, and we want to make sure that we're not ignoring our fears out of some appeal to hypermasculinity or some narrative of who and what Black men are supposed to be, but that we're trying to wrestle and navigate our fear the same way Black women do. And sometimes we take for granted the labor that Black women do to make it in a world, and that conversation is so incredibly important. I want to ask you all something from your respective areas of expertise and experiences. Sort of, what are the changes what are the transformative processes? What do you want to see happen so that we can get better health and birthing outcomes? Because the birthing outcomes we see right now are indefensible. They're explainable, but they're indefensible. They're disturbing. They're chilling, in fact. And I see it up close sometimes. And we got to do something. And each of you work in different areas. So sort of what do you think needs to be done? What would you advise to be done?
As mentioned before, more father inclusivity in these systems. I feel like men need to be educated with their partners. I was lucky enough, my partner was always including me in everything. I was the one who actually found our midwife and interviewed the midwife for my partner. And and she really got me involved in that process, or she got me reading prenatal books that she's cooking. So really, having that partnership is really important, and that father inclusivity is everything. I feel like men really do want to be a part of that process. Sometimes we get pushed away, and I think it's time that we stop doing that. I think if we're bringing a life in, a new life into the world, we want to play our parts. We want to raise our child just as much as the mother does. So yeah, that father inclusivity in these systems, like midwives and doulas are already doing. I wish we could see that more in the hospitals. More men wanting to educate themselves, more father men groups. And I also feel like this needs to be included in the educational system as well. I feel like, people should be learning this stuff in high school. So, whenever they're out in the real world, or whenever they're thinking about having children, they'll already have a sense of what to do. I'm grateful that we are changing that stigma now, and that more men, more fathers are wanting to get involved. I'm speaking with high schoolers who are wanting to learn more about maternal health. So I think that's just amazing to see, really, being hands-on from people with experiences, listening to other people's stories so you can learn from them, learn from their situation. So whenever you're put, into a situation yourself, you know what to do. But yeah, more education and inclusivity for fathers is what I want to see.
So I would echo that, Bruce. I appreciate all of that. I would also say that one of the things I'd like to see from a systemic standpoint is an expansion of how we look at implicit bias training, because some of the most implicit bias training I've seen focuses on racial and ethnic and cultural bias, but expand that bias to include gender norms on a number of different spaces, but specifically, as we're talking about mothers and fathers here, to expand the conversation around what what male engagement should look like in this process. So I'd like to see an expansion around that as we start to, hopefully, as providers start to better understand what those biases might look like. Really leaning into what respectful maternity care looks like, what respectful family care looks like, care that centers the family, centers the mom and birthing person, with them as the driver in their own birthing experience, that recognizes the partnership between family and provider, and get away from some of those traditional. I think we're starting to do it, but more needs to be done. Getting away from that paternalistic. I've gone through however many years of medical school and fellowships, yada, 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 and really starting to value the lived experiences that families have, and work together as partners in that conversation. So I'd love to see those things take place. And then some systems do this, but I'd like to see there be more accountability in terms of patient satisfaction, in ways for patients to assess and hold providers and systems accountable in ways that other families can see, almost like, this is maybe a weird example, but like a patient Yelp, and have that Yelp be attached to some level of reimbursement. So you can better understand what family experiences from all different demographics was like at XYZ hospital's hands, and have that be able to connect to some level of experience, so of reimbursement. So those are some things I love to see.
We do that over here at Earth App. I just want to let y'all know. Today is actually Earth Day. Mayor Adams announced that today, April 11th, from now on is considered Earth Day. So if y'all don't know what Earth is, check it out. It's an amazing app where families of color, people that look like us in the community, are rating these hospitals. So check it out, please.
That's an alley-oop to Kimberly Alice Sears. So that's alley-oop there.
So I guess so my background is in architecture and construction. My wife has my ear.
Yeah.
And so if I were to see something different, I would see more birthing centers and less hospitalization of pregnancy. From what I've seen and what I've heard, pregnancy is always treated as an illness when you're in the hospital. Whereas if you have a birthing center, it's dedicated to the birthing.
That's good.
So if we have more birthing centers, I think that we can get more education, we can get more equity in pulling that out of that health hospital system, and that's just coming from my thoughts as an architect, as someone in construction.
No, that's helpful. You all said something else a minute ago that I thought was really interesting, John. You talked about respectful care and sort of being responsive to families and communities, and not just coming in like, I got all the degrees, I got all the knowledge, y'all sit and listen, right? There's that. And I know, and so I'd like to hear more about sort of what a culturally / racially, ethnically sensitive, targeted, directed, or maybe just the word responsive, culturally responsive medical care would look like. And that's for you, John. But I'm thinking about you, Bruce, and Osei, and I'm thinking about the work that you all do. How does the work of home birth, how does the work of the doula, how does the work of the midwife help us get that kind of outcome? How do those kind of spaces, in addition to traditional medical spaces, which some of us have to do for lots of reasons, how do all these factors help us get to that place of proper, respectful, dignified care?
Yeah, I think for me, it starts with, as I was mentioning before, centering the patient, right? Like letting the centering the family and what their experience, the experience they want, what they want their birthing experience to be. I know the CDC had a campaign at one point in time called Hear Her, where you're starting with, what do you want your experience to look like? So from a culturally competent perspective, that might take different forms, but for whatever that means to you, you're centering that, and you have a provider and care team that's on board with what you want your experience to be. And then having doulas and midwives and those folks who can help to amplify and support that in situations where you may be presented with opportunities in the birthing experience to make medical choices that you don't want to feel like you now have to completely deviate from a plan because there's the providers are telling you got to go a different way. You obviously want to make sure you're making an informed choice, but you should be able to do that in a way that allows you to still get the experience that you want, understanding the medical risk and complexity. So having voices that can still hold the providers accountable to whatever your defined experience is what I think about when I think respectful care.
Yeah, that.
If that is what respectful care looks like, Osei, then what role can midwives and doulas and home birth, what role can those things play in that?
I think John then put it back where the midwife and the home births, which is, you said, kind of influence and emphasize that respectful care. and challenge the providers to make it available. Because we did the home birth, we did the midwife, we did the doula, but it wasn't covered by our provider. I have a government job; it was not covered. I had to pay out of pocket, and I was luckily available to have. We had the funds to do it. But I think that having the doulas and midwives and home birthing professionals, they need to help to push that option and opportunity with the providers.
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback off these gentlemen. So I also teach, cultural humility as well to medical students. And yeah, centering the patient is definitely a huge one, and really tailoring to their needs, because if you're not tailoring to the need, then you're already failing the patient. You're already failing that person. So really, yeah, having a sense of community, I think with some of these systems, um, some of these providers don't want to work with midwives because midwives are taught a certain way, and more of a holistic way, and the medical professionals are they're trained in another way, so there's always this feud. But I feel like if a woman is not high risk, there's no need for her to go to the hospital to give birth, when she could give birth naturally. She can give birth holistically, um, and these lead to better birthing outcomes. You understand, like when when women used to be on the plantations, they used to have midwives on the plantations, and when slaves were a hot commodity, they were able to, these women were able to birth new babies all the time with no problems. If you look now with the systems, it was a lot safer for us to give birth. It was a lot safer for our grandparents, our great grandparents to give birth than it is today here in America. Um, yeah, and like you hear a lot about funding and new equipment for technology, and that doesn't solve it. I don't understand how we were having better birthing outcomes back in the 70s, back in the 60s, when we didn't have all of these things. So I really believe that yeah, holistic care, and I don't want to take away from doctors as well, but I do wish that doctors and providers would want to work more with midwives, because there are situations that midwives can't handle that may need a surgical answer to, and doctors are professions at that. But yeah, I believe if women are being taken care of before, during, and after childbirth, I believe that's the correct way that we can do it. And we can curve all of these mental stress factors, and all of these things that come after birthing. But I believe, and plus, midwives are constantly checking up on women after they give birth, you know, versus, a lot of these women can't even get appointments after giving birth.
Yeah.
And,
Like,
sometimes
turn
they won't be able to see, a doctor until a couple weeks out, a month out, when they're having these internal issues going on. So I think, yeah, it's very important that I think a midwife's role is very important. I think a doctor's role is very important. But I think it's time that we bridge that gap and we come together, and create these better birthing outcomes.
One thing I want to add to that, Bruce, because you said something at the end there that I want to double down on. I think that follow up that midwives and doulas and the care team, that care team you're talking about can do, is extremely important when you think about some of the like postpartum mental health challenges that families experience, because there's the mom, the entire family dynamic is changing, and the birthing person, the dynamic is changing, their partner dynamic is changing. So having these extensions of your family to be able to come in and check in and see how things are going, maybe identify some things that could be off based on how you were presenting prior to birth, and having those kind of that kind of support step in and maybe able to get you some resources if they see things being a little bit off, I think can't be understated.
Yeah, I would totally agree on that postpartum piece. I think it's critical. Just one of the things that me and my wife have been doing. So my wife's a postpartum doula, and so that's one of the areas that she really concentrates in, and just making sure that the mom and father are supported during that postpartum period, because it's a lot of stress, especially for our new moms, and just not only just dealing with the mental stress, but the physical aspects, and making sure that they're actually fed well. There's certain meals that culturally, there's certain meals that should be prepared after a pregnancy is completed. So I think we need to kind of re-engage in that piece of the culture that we still have amongst our families. We need to just kind of make sure that that's still alive.
And when Bruce talked about the fatherhood inclusivity piece, I have from personal experience have had friends who while their partner was having some postpartum mental health challenges because of the just the changing dynamics, he was also having it, and not being able to not be able to his world was changing in the same way that his wife's world was changing. So being able to identify, hey, you may not be there may be some support you may need as well. So you're not pouring from an empty cup. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's symbiotic almost. Mom and dad are connected, period. And what mom's going through, dad is going to feel that. He's going to express it differently, but he's going to have that same challenge to deal with.
I want to add another piece tonight. We got some questions. We got some serious, interesting, and good questions in the comments that we're going to get to in just 1 second. If anyone else watching has a question or a comment that they want to share with us, please drop it in the chat. It'll get to me. I'm loving the conversation here with my brothers. It's a beautiful thing. And forgive me, Brother Malcolm is not feeling too well, so I got to keep checking on him.
Do your thing, Mark.
Yeah, and his bathroom schedule is incompatible with our. Turn the camera off for a second and handle some things. But what role does class play in all this? Because there's also a way that as Black men we get read when we walk into the hospital. But then there's a way that I can ask a question a certain way, use a certain word, tell people I know John, whatever the thing might be, and suddenly like, oh, you're good, right? But then there are people who can't do that, and they get read differently. I talked to a nurse when my youngest was born. We were talking to the doctor. The doctor was giving us, great conversation. We were talking about medical reports we'd read. We read the studies and all that kind of. We were good, right? But she was telling us, this doctor was saying that some of the nurses at the hospital will read mothers based on their class status and whether they like them or not, and whether they're agreeable or not. And they'll actually punish them in certain kinds of ways. Dorothy Roberts talks about this in her work. They'll, for example, having somebody take a drug test.
Yeah.
Right. So if I read you as somebody who I don't like the way you're asking me a question, and I know that if I give you a drug test and it comes back positive for something, I can now not only potentially take your child from you, I can also criminalize you. I can charge crimes against the baby. Right. But the whole request of the drug test is itself up to the discretion of this nurse, who's not making a decision because I look high or don't, but simply because they want to make choices about how to treat me based on who they think I am in the world. Will they will they listen to my pain? Will my pain score report be the same as somebody who's read as being more polished or more educated? Will they hear me when I say I'm hurting? I mean, Bruce, your story breaks my heart. And the thing that breaks my heart the most is, as you say, it was 100% preventable. I'm not saying it was a class thing, but it's just the fact that they weren't listening. And class becomes black. People don't listen to women. They don't listen to Black women, and they damn sure don't listen to poor Black women, right? And if I were to add immigrant status or anything else, it would just keep getting more and more and more challenging to be heard. And against the backdrop of all of that, I mean, I don't even know if it's a question as much as it's a frustration I have at how we treat poor people, but how we treat everybody on the margins. What do we do? How do we fix this? How do we get at this? How do we as brothers have something to say about that? Because the other piece of this, real quick, is they don't even want us, and they don't even expect us to be there. They literally don't expect us to be there. They're like, "Who are you?" "Oh, I'm here for the what, filling out paperwork and stuff." It's two of y'all. Like, yeah, what do you mean?
Yeah.
There's genuine surprise and bewilderment about why there's two of us.
Yeah.
All of it is just part of the process. Anyway, y'all do with that what y'all want.
That is our reality, unfortunately. And as one of the things that growing up, you have to code switch. So you got to be able to know how to code switch. And it's unfortunate because if you don't know how to code switch, you're in trouble. I think one of the things that we have to be able to do is code switch. I was watching this comedian. She said, "I speak English, Spanish, and Caucasian." And I was like, yep, you got to be able to do that in order to get what you need. So I think one of the strategies we got to continue to teach our kids is you got to be able to learn how to code switch. As unfortunate as it may be, but I think that's a temporary fix, but the whole system needs to change.
And while I do agree with the I appreciate that I was saying, I do agree with the sort of immediate strategy of figuring out how to play with the hands you're dealt. I want to get to a place where we change everything, right? So it's not, the onus is not on the people who need the care to make sure they say the thing the right way, or act the right way, or come in this way, or build a relationship, or have the onus is not on them to make sure they get good care, but we're holding our providers accountable to make sure that they aren't making those judgments that Mark alluded to. One of my heroes, who many of you might know, Dr. Monica McLemore. She talks about make this all different, and really that's what it is, making this all different. That it should not be on us to have to say the right thing, do the right thing. Care should be a right that we have, and quality care, and not being seen as a person who, whether I'm from a lower socioeconomic status or not, that should not impact the way I get treated when I walk through the door.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to take a lot of undoing, reverse engineering. Like it's gonna take a lot to really get them to fully understand the Black perspective, or even care in that matter. And with my situation, with my very first appointment with the gynecologist, I felt like I didn't belong, not because I was there, but because the gynecologist made me feel like I didn't belong there. She's asking Amber and I if we're married, and I'm asking these personal questions, and I'm telling her no, but we have plans, and just being judged right off then, with the OBGYN smacking her lips and rolling her eyes, because it doesn't fit her culture, or she has there's a lot of implicit bias that goes on. And it's crazy because I was actually watching this movie some time ago. I don't want to get no spoilers or nothing, but this Black woman was pregnant, and the doctors were treating her a certain way during the appointments, but their demeanor would switch really quick whenever they found out that her husband was a white cop. And when he came into the room, the language, the lingo, everything became different. So yeah, unfortunately, that is the Black experience. These are things that we have had to deal with since for over 400 years. We've had to deal with this kind of treatment. So I think it's just going to take a lot of conversations. It's going to take a lot of accountability, for sure. I think once there's accountability, I really think that's when things will change. Because it's, as Black men, they want to hold us accountable for everything. So I believe that, once accountability happens, we can really have these conversations in these spaces, and try to make change, because I think all we want is to live here and be happy amongst everyone. We want to be seen as regular human beings. We want to be seen as humans first. We want to be seen as man first. We want to be seen as woman first. Um, so I think, a lot of reverse engineering, a lot of these conversations need to be had, but accountability has to be the biggest takeaway.
Somebody from the chat said, short of going and getting an MD ourselves, what is the best way for men to advocate on behalf of the women in our lives with respect to doctor-patient interactions? What role do we play in that room?
So my thoughts on that, and I know I have brothers on the call who have much more clinical experience in the room, but I've been work obviously in the room with my wife and been a caregiver for my parents, and one of the things I've tried to do in those experiences is start to prep the day before. Like, if are there questions that you have? Are there things that you're feeling now that we need to raise with the provider tomorrow? Anything that has felt off in the last few weeks, let's talk through what those might be right now. So I'm making a running list of questions and a running list of things. So when we get in the room, I'm going to work alongside my wife in this case, and when I'm working with my parents in other cases, making sure we get through all of their questions before we leave the room. And we've been in those environments where a provider will try to come in with a quick 2, 3, 4 minute check in and out. Like, no, hold on for a second. We haven't got to the third, fourth, and fifth question here. And I've seen sometimes where you can be kind of steamrolled because of that paternalistic approach to medicine that we have, and having that list and making sure those questions are we've gotten through are heard has really helped to make sure that at least the concerns we have and the treatment, the things we've been researching online, we get answers to in that room. And if anything comes up, stopping the provider and saying, okay, are we good with that? We just having the voice amplified, essentially.
Yeah, I would have to echo that, Jonathan. Just being prepared and doing as much research as possible. And I'm going to give a little. I cheat because I have a mom doctor and a sister doctor.
Oh,
Opposite
order.
So I try to do some prep, but I'm making a phone call. But definitely that preparation and educating as much as possible is the best direction.
Yeah, same. I'm lucky to be in a community with midwives and doulas and doctors. I'm being educated every single day. I'm glad that I took the initiative to learn as I was going along during the birthing process with Amber as well, to really understand the terminologies and different levels, what needs to be done, things that you should be eating, that could help your health and to have a better birthing outcome. But yeah, I'm making a call too, and I'm asking these midwives and these questions because I have people coming to me asking me questions, and I'll give them what I feel is the best answer, but I'm gonna double check with a midwife, or I'm gonna double check with a doula, I'm gonna double check with a doctor, and then point them in the right direction. But yeah, education is a very big piece to this.
We got another question coming in here that I want you all to tackle, and it's a great one. It's a very practical one. How do you connect with more brothers so that they can hear what y'all are sharing? Because again, from April to now, we back together. I'm in the mix now. I wasn't in the last mix. It's hard for brothers to get together, and we know each other.
Yeah.
I know John. You know what I mean? I got to go through his best friend Oshel just to make a connect in between the years. And if I don't know somebody, how do I find a Bruce? How do I find, you know what I mean, IJ? Like how do I make that happen? Where's the network? Is this a group of progressive conscious brothers that y'all have meetings? Like, what's going on? How do y'all do it? Bruce, I'm gonna start with you.
Oh yeah, so there's a Luxor collective. I'm not on it as much, I'm not gonna lie, but my brother Omari Maynard, he runs the group and he is on it. and he's getting brothers from all over the U.S., really from everywhere, to get together and connect. Like one of our groups that we have is people who are grieving through loss. Fathers who are grieving through loss, and we connect every 2 weeks. We connect, and every Thursday of the second week we connect. It doesn't matter if it's 2 people on. It doesn't matter if it's 10 people on, 30 people on. But we got fathers that are on there, and I think being vulnerable. By being vulnerable, that allows other men to be vulnerable, and open up as well, and that's when we can really learn from each other. As and having these safe spaces, these judgment-free zones, where men can really have these conversations is very necessary. So it's called the Luxor Collective. You can hit up Omari Maynard, or you can hit me up and I'll set you up as well, and we'll get you a part of the group. Just by being vulnerable and having these conversations and making the time too. If I know that I'm in between like flights, or if I'm in between work, and I'm like a friend of mine pops up, maybe my friend just last week said he was going through something. Let me check on him this week and see how he's doing. So I'm making those calls in between time. I'm calling like 5 people at a time. Yo, you good? You good? You all right? You need anything? So I think just having that and having that support is how we get men to really come together, because we all lead very busy lives. A lot of us, we get carried away in trying to provide for our families, and work and family just becomes a really big part of our lives. But yeah, check on your brothers and make sure that they're doing all right, and see how we could do to make their lives a little easier. Even just by listening to them, to what they're dealing with is really unloading for them, and it's something that all of us men need.
And I would say from my perspective, my interactions happen a little more organically. I may take you up on that, Bruce, to get connected to that resource, but through faith groups and through like fraternity connections and brothers that I exist with, just to do life with, the brothers that I do life with, because of the passion I have for my work, I'll bring up some of the challenges and things that I may be dealing with, and seeing professionally what the people know the issues that I'm passionate about. They know the things I try to champion. So I bring those up in spaces with brothers all the time, to talk through those things and just make myself available for those conversations, or for just general conversations about being vulnerable, about being fathers, and being able to lift each other up in prayer and support and those kind of things whenever we need to, or just, hey, let's grab a bite to eat, or go do something after work and talk through something. We're having a challenge with a child rearing thing or something like that. But most of it happens organically. I've been trying in my professional settings, with being a male in this maternal and child health space. I've just started getting connected with a group to do more mentoring for men in the maternal and child health space, to make sure that we can be advocates for women better in the MCH space.
Yeah, I think my experience is very similar. It's very just organic. I don't have a organization per se, but I think it is critical that we need to talk to each other, and just reach out when we need assistance. I know that I'm not having any more children right now, but my younger brother is, and some of his friends are, and I reach out to them when I can and provide support where I can. So yeah.
Movie. Okay, I got 2 more questions for you. One big one, and then a final wrap-up question. And they sort of dovetail, I think, nicely. The question I wanted to ask you was, what needs to happen to get more Black men involved with this movement? How do we pique the interest of men and encourage greater participation in the fight for birth equity and reproductive justice? How do we do that? Maybe John, maybe you could take that one, and I'll ask everybody the wrap-around question, unless somebody else wants to jump in too.
I'll be quick with my response. I think Bruce mentioned it earlier. I don't necessarily know if it's a piquing of the interest. because in this generation, I've seen, maybe it's just the groups that I'm in, you see men wanting to be more involved, wanting to be more engaged, and wanting to be included in the process. I'm not that's not, I don't want to be a sweeping generalization, because there may be folks you have to bring along, and for those, I think it's helping them to understand the importance of why their voice matters in this conversation. But for those who have a natural inclination towards being involved in this process, making sure they see ways to be engaged, invited in, not pushed away, not moved to the side, and being more inclusive, as you mentioned earlier, Bruce.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that I've so one of the things I think I mentioned earlier, one of the things me and my wife do is we teach a class to young men's rites of passage, and the young men are interested. They want to know. They want to understand the process. They want to understand what's really happening. So I think part of the thing is we need to just continue to educate at all levels. Teenagers, like Bruce, like you said, high school, um, young men that are actively having children now. I think we need to provide the education we can and just bring them in, let them know the different options. I mean, I'm an advocate for home birthing, but it's not for everybody. But they need to understand what the risks are and the challenges are for both for any option, free birth, home birth, medical birth. They need to understand what the options are, and I think that giving them that information will bring them in.
I'm glad you said that. People going into this, because that's my final question. Actually, what do you? I want each of you. I got 3 minutes left, so you all each get 1 minute. What would you tell fathers who are walking into the birth process? What do they need to know?
To pay attention. I think just paying attention to details is really important. Fathers that's going into this, they may be scared. They may feel like they have to overcompensate in some ways. Being a new father or stepping into fatherhood it is scary. It is frightening, um, because we all hope for the best. We all want the best. But I think, yeah, just really wanting to be involved in that birthing process, understanding your role as a father, understanding your importance of a father, your power as a father, is really important. And that education, really educating yourself on the birthing process, um, loving the child, loving your partner, wanting to continue to grow with your partner, um, or or just wanting best for the child as well. But my message is, you got this. Um, to fathers, you got this. You're going to be an amazing father. Um, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are going to happen, but learn from those mistakes, and that's going to make you an even better father, a better person overall. But yeah, my message to all the fathers out there is, you got this. You got this.
Yeah, I would say read as much as you can, educate yourself as much as you can, and make sure you're at every prenatal appointment. Um, I'm going to speak towards a home birthing experience. Work out, because you are going to physically need to support your wife. Okay. I had to hold my wife for like minutes at a time.
Physically, I'm glad you said that word.
Get strong. Okay. Be prepared to do some physical work. um, but yeah, you gotta be prepared to also be prepared to step out of your comfort zone in terms of the type of care you provide. If you are not a cleaner, start learning how to clean. If you're not a cook, start learning how to cook. You gotta start doing things that you may not be accustomed to. And I'm going to echo what Bruce said. You got this. You can do this. This is not an impossible chore, and it's enjoy it. I think that my wife teases me. She says the only time she's seen me cry is when one of my children are born, or when I saw a really nice car. So I'm like, enjoy the process. It's a beautiful process. I think that yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I cried when my children were born and when the Eagles lost the Super Bowl. But that's a good conversation. But I would say echo everything you both said. Enjoy the process. I mean, it should be a beautiful one, and we're fighting to make sure the system allows it to be beautiful for everyone. But just be present, be prepared, and understand the power of your voice, and the challenge I would offer to them is, as you're exercising that voice, while we're trying to amplify the voice of our partner, don't let it overshadow the voice of your partner. So that you're still supporting her in the experiences she wants to have, but enjoy the experience, and remember that you are the consumer in the process. So hold your providers accountable for the experience that you want.
That's right.
I think that's a powerful way to end this conversation. My brothers, you all are modeling every day what it means to be engaged, committed, progressive Black men in the struggle for reproductive justice and birth equity. And I'm so grateful to call you all friends, comrades, allies, and our sisters are worth all of the efforts that you all are giving. So we're gonna keep building, we're gonna keep growing, we're gonna keep struggling. That's what we do. That's what we've always done. That's what we need to do. That's what we're gonna keep doing. So everyone, please, in your respective virtual areas, give a round of applause for Jonathan Webb, Bruce McIntyre, and IJ Olsen Hargrove. And I'm gonna bring back up to the stage my dear sister, Dr. Kanika Harris, who will usher us on and give us the benediction.